Welcome to the 501 Corner, where memory, truth, and justice meet. I'm Steve Navoychek. For years, I've walked scenes most folks never see, listened to stories most never hear, and learned that the truth is not always easy, but it is always there. Now let's get to it. This is Steve, and before I tell you this story, I need to give you a clear warning. What you're about to hear is a real memory from my time in EMS in the 1970s. It involves a self-inflicted gunshot wound and the immediate aftermath. Some of the details may be disturbing or triggering. If that's something you're not in a place to hear right now, I'd ask you to step away from this one. For those who stay, this is the reality of the job and the people who did it. This is one of those calls that never leaves you. Back in the mid-1970s, when I was running the Hot Springs, Garland County Ambulance Service, we were still proving what EMS was supposed to be. We started that service in 1973. It was the first municipally operated ambulance service in the state of Arkansas. Before that, most folks don't realize it, but ambulance work was often tied to funeral homes. We were trying to drag it out of the dark ages and turn it into something professional, something people could count on. I was the director, but I always told people the truth about that. I wasn't the cowboy. They were. Those young medics, they were the EMS Cowboys. They did the hard riding. They worked the scenes. They made the calls when it counted. I just rode behind them as the trail boss. I herded the herders. And we were a damn good team. We didn't talk a lot about standards back then. We just lived them. And one morning that got tested. We got a call on a man who'd been shot in the head, and he was standing in the street. When we rolled up, the police already had the scene surrounded. Officers behind their cars, guns trained on this man. And there he stood, leaning forward on a .30-30 rifle like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Barrel was down in the pavement, his head was lowered, and one hand was up at his face. And then you started to understand what you were looking at. He was reaching up at his own face, pulling, trying to make sense of what had happened to him. There was massive damage. There's no other way to say it. Later we understood what had happened. When he leaned over the rifle to fire, the angle shifted just enough, and instead of a fatal shot, it caused catastrophic injury, but spared his brain. A miracle, if you want to call it that. In that moment, though, we all saw a man still alive, standing there, trying to function in a body that had just been destroyed. He couldn't speak. All he could make were low, guttural sounds. And we didn't know it then, but later he told us what he was trying to say. He was saying, "Help me, help me, help me." That's when we made the decision. The officers were doing their job. They saw a man with a rifle and they held their position. But our job was different. We saw a patient. I looked at the two medics with me, Hugh Albright and Tom Patton, both good, solid men. I said, "I'm going in, but you don't have to, guys." And Hugh and Tom, without hesitation, said, "Fuck that, let's go." And we stepped off. You could hear the officers behind us yelling, "Stop, don't do that," but we already knew what we were going to do. That man couldn't see. He wasn't aiming at anything. That rifle was just something he was leaning on to stay on his feet. So we walked straight toward him. Slow, steady, no sudden moves, no hesitation, no speech, no drama. Just let's go. That's the job. That's the standard. We got to him, got control, and got him into the ambulance. And now here's something people need to understand about that time. There were no neurosurgeons in Hot Springs. So after we stabilized him, we loaded up and made an overland run to the VA hospital in Little Rock. That run from Hot Springs to Little Rock was the fastest emergency transport we ever recorded while I was there. That record stood until I left EMS in 1980. We drove like his life depended on it, because it did, and here's the part that matters. He lived. That man was a firefighter, one of our own. He went through years of surgeries, years of pain most people couldn't imagine. But he lived. He came back years later and walked into our service just to thank us. We stayed in touch over the years. Later, like so many of these cases, the long-term damage never really let go, and years later, complications and infections from those injuries finally caught up with him. He passed on. But I never forgot that morning, and I never forgot Hugh Albright and Tom Patton. People ask how we ended up being recognized as one of the best ambulance services in the state back then. It wasn't paperwork. It wasn't policy. It was moments like this. It was men who didn't hesitate, men who didn't step back, men who understood exactly what the job was and did it anyway. Those were my cowboys, and I was damn proud to be their trail boss. And that's something I'll carry with me until the day I leave this earth. Now y'all be kind to each other, okay?